everyone, welcome back to week 4 of our Lenten series watching episode 5. I'm Abby.
And I'm Father Raf. And for those of you joining us online or joining us for the first time, welcome. Okay, so this is actually my favorite episode that I've seen so far. But Abby, what did you think? What stood out to you?
I thought this was a very good episode, and there are 2 things that stuck out to me. The first one that stuck out to me was the relationship between Jesus and his mother Mary. I really liked that throughout the episode, we noticed that the wine was getting short and that they were panicking. And it was Mary that noticed, and it was Mary that asked Jesus for help. And it stuck with me because it related that when we are praying, should we be asking Mary as well? And the line that really stuck with me was that when Mary asked, she said, "If not now, when?"
Yeah, that the first time I saw this episode, like it was just really powerful. So this is the first time, obviously, that Mary shows up in the Chosen. When she asks Jesus like that at first, and then she says please, and it kind of flashback in a sense, like we don't need the flashback. We know what she said the first time in the beginning. He kind of smiles at her, but I mean, maybe I'm reading into this, but there's almost like this kind of sadness in it because he also knows that perhaps she doesn't know what she's asking for, right? And then it's like he looks just past her, and like I am sort of reading a little bit, but it's looking past her because he knows this is the first step towards the cross, like this first public miracle. And so the thing that really stood out to me in this episode, one of the things was the conversation between Thaddeus and Mary Magdalene, right? So when they're talking, she's asking about what his dad did, and he was a blacksmith, and she says, well, I feel like being a mason is something harder, and he says it's not that it's harder, it's just more final, right? And as they have this conversation, Jesus is going to do the transforming of the water into wine. And he says, like the blacksmith, if they're not pleased with the thing they've made, they can just put it back into the fire and cast into something else. But with a stone, once you take that first cut, he says that you set it on a trajectory that you can never turn back from, right? And he says that Jesus puts his hand down into the water, and when he brings it back up, it's wine, but it's like it's dripping from the back of his hand, And I was like, that is the most like Eucharistic imagery ever, right? Like wine, blood, right? So that was just really powerful. And he even says, he's like, Father, I'm ready, Anyways, so there's that. But just on a kind of slightly lighter note, like what I really liked about the portrayal of Mary is kind of like what you had said before. You kind of always pictured Jesus as being more like a Pharisee, kind of being like, a little distant, aloof, and proper. Like, I'm not sure if I saw Mary as like distant, aloof, and proper, but like I never thought of like her having friends, like we know Jesus has disciples. We can imagine that, they were his friends, but yeah. And it's just really cool to see like Mary has like a best friend. She's like, if your best friend's getting married, of course you're going to be there, right? Are you going to give me a room? Right. So that's just, it was just really beautiful. And so what was the second thing that stood out to you?
Yes, the second thing that stood out to me was the conversation between John the Baptist and Nicodemus. Although it was a side story, I thought it was really prevalent to what we actually see today. So the conversation that they had, John the Baptist had quoted a prophecy saying that when the Son of God comes down, he will awaken others. But some people will not want to be awakened because they love being asleep and they love the dark. And I thought that this was very prevalent today because still in today's world that when they hear about like Jesus, they still say like, I like where I am right now. Like, I don't want to have that leap of faith. Like, that's nerve-wracking to them, so they want to stay there. I also thought it was really meaningful that John the Baptist had said this to Nicodemus, because Nicodemus, as a Pharisee, he's at that position to say, do I take that leap of faith with Jesus, or am I just going to stay like just away and distant? And Nicodemus, he's all confused. So I felt that the line that John the Baptist said to him was a little more like pushing him in the direction to be awakened. Is there anything else that like stood out to you, Father Raph?
Yeah. So for me, like Thomas really just stood out to me. I think I said before jokingly, Matthew kind of reminds me of me, like having the same outfit every day. But Thomas, like to a T, that scene when Jesus is standing in the room with the 6 stone water jars, he says, "Fill these to the brim." And Thomas is just frustrated. He's like, "I don't know if you heard us properly, right?" And then Thomas is just like it makes no sense, you know. And Jesus says, "You know, I know a man like you in Capernaum, Matthew, always counting, always measuring." And then Thomas says, "Well, that's my job. You know, people will think I haven't done well, right?" And I really see that because like Thomas has basically completely identified himself with this job, you know, and whether he does well or not, basically is whether he's worth anything or not, right? And we see actually Simon, who we know was in that place, in this episode, we see is moving past that, right? Because like he has a conversation with Eden about his experience and like how Jesus called him, and then he's like, are you upset? And she's like, no, I'm not upset. It's like, for once, someone sees in you what I've always seen in you, that you are more than a fisherman, right? And Simon had identified himself with being a fisherman. Like he's got a fish, he's got to catch the, like, you know, pay off the taxes and support his family, right? And that's what got him, that strangely enough, isolated from his family. Like he left Shabbat dinner to go do like the fishing thing because this was his thing, right? But Jesus called him in a sense beyond that, right? That he is more than a fisherman. And we see the effect it has in his relationships. Like this tension in his marriage is healed, right? And there's this joy, which is lacking where Thomas is, right? And so, you know, it remains to be seen if Thomas can be called by Jesus out of that kind of identifying himself with his job.
Thank you so much for joining us. For those who are in person, feel free to stretch your legs and grab some snacks at the back and join us for a discussion afterwards.
And for those of you joining us online, thank you once again. And as usual, you'll find the link to the discussion questions in the description below. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.